Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Tasty Trails Travel Pod. We are back with Ronke Shakirat-Edoho of Nigerian Foodie for part 2, and this one gets into it. If part 1 was learning about what Nigerian cuisine actually is, part 2 is about taking a deeper look and about confronting what people have gotten wrong about it. We're talking street food, what Nigerian food looks like when it travels across the ocean, and the nutrition myths that have followed the cuisine around for years. Ronke has been using her platform to educate about Nigerian food for a long time, and in this episode, she gets specific about the ingredients that get misrepresented, the assumptions people carry, and why so much of what circulates online just isn't accurate. So palm oil is a part of that conversation, and she is setting the record straight. So let's go. I think it's great that people are like know more about it and are being introduced to it, but also that it's really important to preserve where it comes from and the roots and all of that. Do you feel like in general the tribes are respected and the knowledge and all of that as well, or is it kind of dying out more as time moves on? And
No, I think we have a strong culture of respect. We have a strong culture of like origin reference. Like we like to know that this is where something is from, or these are the people that this is from. And I think that is continued from generation to generation.
that's great. That's really, really great. And I imagine there's a bunch of different languages and stuff as well amongst all the
Yes,
tribes.
I believe there are over 300 languages in Nigeria.
Wow, that is so cool. Do you know how many? Do you know how many tribes like roughly there are? Or?
I don't know, but lots in the hundreds. My husband is Nigerian. I'm Nigerian. We speak different languages. When I speak my traditional language, he doesn't understand it. When he speaks it, I don't understand it. So that's how wild it is.
Man, that is just so cool, and I'm fascinated with languages in general, and so it blows my mind all of the different ways that humans have come up to communicate with one another. I mean, there's thousands and thousands of different like languages and stuff. And anyway, that is neither here nor there about in this podcast, but it's still really interesting and really
Yeah,
cool that that it's still like prevalent in Nigeria and that people that's like important to people to remember that.
yeah, yeah, for sure.
And what about holidays and stuff? Like, are there? I mean, it sounds like their food is such an important part of the culture. Are there specific holidays that really make you think of food, or specific dishes that are your favorite because are from a holiday? Or
Yeah, I know that's an excellent question. So Nigeria is a country that has like Muslims and Christians. So the main holidays are around like religion festivals and celebrations. So for example, it was just Eid, I believe, yesterday in Nigeria. And it's not uncommon, the part of the country that I'm from, to have the same family have like different like people of like different religion, right? So you might have a family member that is a Christian, and then you might have a family member that is a Muslim, or you might have a neighborhood where it's like half and half. So there is always like celebrations during, and we like our public holidays in Nigeria, so they do declare, I live in Canada, and it's like all of the public holidays by the beginning of the year. In Nigeria, you don't know all of the public holidays. Like somebody could just wake up and said, this person died, so tomorrow is a public holiday, which is very
oh,
interesting to me, especially as a business owner. 'Cause
yeah.
anyways, anyways, so during those festivals or during those like food is such a central and essential part. So people cook and then they give food to their neighbors. And so if it's like a Muslim holiday, all of the Muslim neighbors will cook. And then you literally, I remember when I was a kid, I used to love doing it. So you have like a fancy new dress, and then you would have like food that's been cooked and prepared for different people. Then you go deliver it, and then those people will give you money. I loved that as a kid. And then,
Oh, that's so
and then
fun.
yeah, it's like, yeah, it's such a big part of the culture. And then during their own holiday, festival, celebration, whatever, they cook and then they bring it to you, and then you give them money to say happy holidays or whatever. So food is such a big part of the culture. And during the holidays, there are specific things that are cooked. So, like Eid, for example, people will have like ram is like one, or like a sheep. I think ram is sheep. Ram is like a big part of like the celebration of the animal that people use. So during Christmas, chicken and turkey, they're like big part. So yeah, it's fun. I like when I think back. that is what I miss the most about like community, the culture of sharing food, the culture of like introducing people to like different kinds of food as well.
Yeah, and the sharing of it for sorry, it was for your when it's your holiday that you bring the food, or it's their holiday that you bring them food.
No, when it's your holiday, you take food to them, and then when it's
Oh, okay.
their holiday, they bring food to you.
Okay. Yeah, that's so cool. Like because you're getting to learn, you're getting excited. Yeah, you're getting excited to learn about these different cultures and stuff. That is so cool. Oh, I love
Yeah.
that. Um,
Yeah.
I really, really like that. And what about street food? Is there a pretty big street food culture?
Yes. Yes. Nigeria and street, like we have a lot and a lot. As a matter of fact, the culture is very interesting. So again, in like the villages and urban and not like the main urban centers, we're a culture of respect, we're a culture of interest in commerce. So when I was growing up, I grew up in a very small town, tiny village. The person who sells, say, fried yam, if one person sells fried yam as like a type of street food, for example, the next person doesn't want to sell the same thing. They just try to find something complementary to sell.
Okay.
So it's like, oh, this person sells this. So let's find something else that people might want to buy and then sell it. So you have people who are able to establish businesses and be successful at it because it's almost like it's an unspoken monopoly for them. They're selling it, they're allowed to sell it, right? And then somebody else sells something else. And you kind of create like businesses like that. So even when it's a town that isn't like big, people are able to have successful businesses just because they are allowed to pretty much like monopolize it without like unnecessary competition. Anyways, so there's a big culture of street food where maybe somebody is selling like akara, which is a type of bean fritter. That's a big part of what people sell. There's like yam and potatoes, like fried yam and fried potatoes that people typically sell. There's suya that I've talked about earlier. There's something called puff puff, which is like a fried sweet dough, and that people typically sell. Grilled fish, grilled chicken, guinea fowl. I don't even know what that is. Guinea
Oh,
fowl is like yeah. It's native to so a lot of people eat it. Like just like people eat chicken. Yeah, actual soup swallows lots. We have things called buka, which are like establishments that sell food in a kind of like street style stalls. Is that how I would explain it? But they sell like, so they could sell like jollof rice or rice and stew and like soups and swallows and things like that. So we have a really big street food culture, and it's not uncommon for people to eat breakfast, lunch, and supper outside from
oh
like
wow.
different food stalls. Yeah.
Okay, wow. I think that's really interesting about the unspoken monopoly, because I bet that also just makes people be more creative as well. Because like, well, I can't do this, so I've got to like come up with something different. And so I bet that sparks a lot of creativity.
Yeah.
That's very cool. And so, what about Nigerian food like outside the country? So, in like London or in Canada, where you are, what do you see generally? Do things get
So
changed because of the palate, or just ingredients and the availability, or what's that
yeah,
like?
no, definitely. I feel like when food leaves the shores of where it's from, there has to be adaptation if you don't want it to die off, right? Because you don't have access to the same set of ingredients, you don't have access to the same sort of like cooking methodology often. So definitely things need to change, right? Like in Nigeria, there's a lot of like open fire cooking. So that introduces like like different flavors. Smokiness, like is one that is often introduced just because of how things are prepared. You really cannot simulate that in North America. You don't cook outside, you don't cook using wood fire. So you have to figure out different ways. So maybe you
Mm.
roast something that is traditionally cooked over open fire to introduce some smoky element into it. There's a lot that is currently happening around Nigerian food, which is beautiful. I have a brand called Atari Foods, and the goal really is to help make things that are often like cumbersome and lengthy to cook. Like we have like a jollof sauce, for example, right? Where you're a busy professional, you don't have an hour to make like a base for jollof. You just open the jar and pour it, right? So you have a lot of like innovation that people are trying to introduce into the cuisine just by virtue of like you don't have the time, you're outside the country. And I think that is definitely moving the culture forward as well. And then you have a lot of like ingredient adaptation, right? So you're cooking a goosey soup, you don't have access to ugu, so you're using spinach or you're using kale as kind of like a way to add leafy greens with when you don't have access to traditional ingredient. And then we have a lot of like population movement as well into places like North America, England, and that has brought with it African markets, which are places where people are trying to make traditional ingredient accessible, and that is an industry that has grown significantly as well over time, and that is introducing not just people that are used to cooking the food, but people that are curious about the food as well, to the food.
Yeah, that's really cool. Do you go back to Nigeria very often?
Uh, yes and no. I think over the last 3 or 4 times that I've gone, it's been because I had something to do in Nigeria. But before then, before I had a family, I used to try to go back as much as possible. But now with the family, I'm so busy all the time. It's
Sure,
difficult to
that's
make the
fair.
time. Yeah.
What's the first thing or one of the things that you're the most excited about when you go back to Nigeria? You're like, oh, I can't wait to
Food.
like have this.
Food, street food, amala, ewedu, begiri, stew. That's like a dish. It's called abula, and yeah, that is my first thing that I want to eat when I like. It's not jollof rice, no. I can get good jollof in a lot of different places. But the the core traditional food, definitely. That's always what I look forward to.
Uh, I love, yeah, one of my favorite things about whenever I go home is to think about the food that I'm gonna eat. Because even if you can try to get like things that are similar, it's just like it's not quite the same. And that's always the first thing I think about is the food.
Yeah, for sure.
Um, and you had mentioned about like how about the palm oil and using a lot of that. And I know like it's today it's controversial just because it's been used incorrectly in other places. How has that kind of affected? I don't know, like I mean, probably not in Nigeria. You said you guys are cultivating it like sustainably and everything, and I'm sure have like all of the knowledge. But has that affected Nigerian cuisine like around the world, or just like its perception and things like that? Or can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely, 110% yes. I think that when you take something from where it's from, which is in this case palm oil being taken out of West Africa, it's industrialized in Asia, Malaysia specifically, and it's become this monster of an ingredient that people now have an association when they see palm oil, they immediately think bad. And unfortunately, or fortunately, the internet is a place where wrong information tend to spread very fast, and correcting it becomes almost impossible. And that's what I found with palm oil. As much as I can, I have a platform that I try to use to educate people around palm oil. It's not uncommon for me to have posts about palm oil and then people start talking about orangutans. I'm like, I'm Nigerian. There are no orangutans in Nigeria, first of all. So this is not a Nigerian problem. And I'm conscious about where my palm oil comes from. And I try to encourage people who are actually interested in learning to try as much as possible to understand where their palm oil comes from. A Nigerian that is using palm oil is not using the palm oil from Malaysia. They're using palm oil from Nigeria. Like I said, I grew up in the house. I had like palm trees that is harvested, and the palm tree is such a beautiful multi-purpose plant. The palm tree gives, you know, the palm oil. It gives palm kernel oil. It gives palm shaft, which is used for, or chaff, which is used for actual cooking, right? So when you look at our traditional approach to the tree, I cannot think of any other tree that is as respected or is used in a way that every single part. When the palm tree is growing, they harvest they're not leaves. I don't know what the proper agricultural term is, right? but they harvest the leaves. I'm just going to use that. And when they harvest it, I remember my grandma would collect like the vines and use it to
Mhm.
make broom, which is then used for cooking. You use it as like a cooking tool, used to like break down things. Is used to sweep. It's used to, those like Mr. Clean things that you use to take out cobwebs. It's
I like a
used for
duster. Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And then the actual back of it, it's cut up and it's used to make baskets. They use it to
Oh,
weave
cool.
basket, and those baskets are then used for, carrying harvest from the farm. They're used for storage at home. They're biodegradable. Like you have this beautiful, incredible plant that it's in its natural habitat. It's respected so much, and it's such an environmentally friendly approach to the tree. And then because somebody decided to commercialize it, all of us cannot use it now because it's bad. Anyways, yeah, I can talk about palm oil and palm tree for a long time, but I try to use my platform to educate as much as possible.
Well, I mean, I think that's really important because, yeah, you can't just like blankets, because the problem with the commercialization is in like Indonesia and Malaysia and stuff is they're burning down, all these fields to like create palm trees, and just doing it for the oil. They're not using it in the way that you just described, where you can use the tree in a ton of ways. They're not doing it responsibly. They're just destroying the soil, so you can't like reuse the soil and stuff like that. So there's so many problems with that industry. But it's really important, like you said, to decipher between the industry and people who are doing it correctly. And so, yeah, it has gotten such a bad rap. And so I think that's a really important message that people know and understand,
Yeah.
that you can get sustainable palm oil, or palm oil that it's coming from like a good source. Like it's not just a blanket statement bad thing.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Well, yeah, thank you for explaining that. And how did you get into like what you're doing? Like how did you get into to cooking, to sharing with others? Like where does that all that
Yeah,
passion come
no, that's an excellent question. I've always liked food. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a farmer. So my grandparents grew, I would say, more than 80% of what they consumed.
from? Wow.
So like seeing them grow food, interact with food, use food for medicine. Like when you're sick, they will make you like herbal mixtures that you consume and then you'll find the next day. To me, it was just so fascinating. And I really, really, really wanted to be a farmer. That was what I wanted to do. But growing up, young girl in Nigeria, your options were you were a lawyer, an accountant, a medical doctor, a disappointment. That was it. So it was important for me to do something that I felt was cool. So I went to school and I did accounting, and I got my CPA. But food was always a part of me. So when I was in university, actually, it was when I was like, I love food. I talk about food. I cook for my friends all the time. And at that time when I started, which was, it's been almost 20 years now, when I started Niger Foodie as a blog, there was so much misinformation around African food. Even huge platforms will write things like African food is often made with poorer qualities of goat and meat. That is a direct quote that has been in my head for that long. And I'm just like, no, it's not. That's like the fact that, uh the TV is always about like poverty and things like that does not mean that there isn't a rich food culture. There isn't a culture of sustainability. There isn't a culture of like fermentation and actual food product development. So for me, I had something to say, and fortunately I could create a platform to talk about it. So that was what got me into food blogging. And from that, yeah, kind of started my food company, and yeah, that's what I do now full time.
Oh, I love that. I love that you were seeing things that you disagreed with and then like spoke up about it, because yeah, there's a ton of misconceptions. There's a ton of also just talking about Africa as if it's, you know,
It's a
one
country.
yeah, and it's like, oh my God, it is so huge. There's no way you could ever make any sort of blanket statement about like an entire continent. And so I think it's great that you said something, and then it's amazing that you've like turned it into something as well. In Canada, is there a lot of interest in learning about Nigerian food and stuff like that?
I think it's getting better. I think that, with the internet, and opportunity for things to go viral, right? Like I think Egusi and Fufu was one that went viral. Maybe was it last year or whatever it was, and everybody wanted to try it. Everybody was desperate looking for Egusi and Fufu just because they wanted to experience it. So I think that TikTok especially has been very helpful in terms of, pushing things out there. The interest is slow, but I think it's getting there.
Yeah, well, that's exciting. At least it's moving in the right direction. And I know you also talk about how wanting to push back on the nutrition and how like it, the food is unhealthy. Can you talk a little bit about that as well and kind of the idea, like where that
Yeah,
comes from and
yeah. So, I think that there is a general thing where we tend to bash things that we don't understand. I think it's just human nature, right? I think if we don't understand it, then we think it's bad. So I think just looking at our traditional food, right? We use palm oil in our cooking. Palm oil is high in saturated fat. We eat a lot of carbohydrates, right? Like, so people look at those two things and they're like, "Ooh, palm oil bad, carbohydrates bad. So the cuisine must be bad, right?" And everything is nuanced. Carbohydrates are not just simple carbohydrate, they're complex carbs. Palm oil is not the only ingredient that we use in cooking. We have adequate protein. We have fermented foods. We have lots and lots and lots of vegetables that we consume. So even though we eat composite meals, so meals that are kind of like cooked together, we eat nutritionally balanced food. And I think that knowledge gap was just there, and it was prevalent, and it was kind of like the thing that people tend to talk about. So for me, as somebody who had like, the background and somebody who was interested in the food and the nutrition, I started talking about it from the perspective that I knew. And then, I started a company in 2016 called Losing Nigerian, where we actually looked at our food. We did a lot analysis of like the ingredient. We look at the impact on blood sugar. We look at the impact, and
mm,
we found that our traditional dietary approach, there's actually nothing wrong with it. In fact, I would say it's something that can be exported, like the way we eat and the way we combine food, and the impact that food has on overall health is something that the North American system might benefit from, if adapted properly. So we started talking about that, started helping people. Now we have registered dietitians who understand the food and the food culture. We work with universities and organizations in
oh,
providing
wow.
education, and we help individuals as well to just have an understanding of how to eat the food and how to eat it better for whatever it is that you're dealing with.
Oh, wow. That is really, really cool. That's so cool. Congratulations. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's one question that I like to ask everybody that comes on, and that is, what would your last meal be?
Rice and stew with
Okay.
plantain. Yes. White rice, stew, which is red stew, with some fried plantains. That's my favorite. I don't have a favorite food, but I would say that's like one of my favorite things to eat.
I mean, yeah, classic, classic. That's awesome. Great choice. Well, thank you so much for chatting today. This has been so much fun and so interesting and enlightening. Can you tell everybody how to find your products, all the information, the blog as well? But yeah, how can they get in touch with
Yeah,
you?
so thank you so much for having me. It's been fun. I love to talk about Nigerian food. I like to educate about Nigerian food. So you can find me on Instagram at Niger Foodie. So that would be nine JAFOODI. And when you find Niger Foodie, you'll be able to find all of my other things. But my product brand is Atari Foods, so ATAREFOODS, and we're just at atarifoods.com, and we ship our product everywhere across North America.
Amazing. And I'm going to have all of that linked down in the description below so everyone can find that super easily. But yeah, thank you so much. This has been so much fun.
No, thank you for having me. It's been a fun time.
Nigerian food has been feeding people, telling stories, and carrying culture for generations, and the world is starting to pay attention. Ronke is one of the people making sure that when that attention arrives, the story being told is actually the right one. Give her a follow on Instagram, check out her products. All the links are down below. And if this episode or any of the episodes opened up a part of the world you didn't know much about before, make sure to share it with a friend. That's genuinely what this podcast is here for, to share cultures, spark curiosity, and remind us that there's so much world out there worth knowing about. The more people in that conversation, the better. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Leave a review if you've got a minute, and come find me over on Instagram at Tasty Trails Travel Pod. So, see you next time. Bye.